Welcome to a place where hearts unwind, infinite threads that gently bind, love and compassion in every line. Together we rise through space and time.
Hey, welcome back to Infinite Threads. I'm your host, Bob. It is hot today. Today I want to talk about the kind of love that does not always need words. That may sound strange coming from someone who spends so much time thinking through words, but the older I get, the more I believe the deepest things often arrive before language even catches up. We know when a room feels safe. We know when someone is truly glad to see us. We know when a silence is peaceful and when it is full of something unsaid. Love often speaks in that hidden place. Not loudly, not with perfect sentences. Sometimes it comes through a look that just lasts a little longer than expected. Sometimes it's in the way a person turns toward us when we begin to speak. There are moments when the voice itself carries more tenderness than the words could ever hold. That is the language beneath words. A child understands it long before they can explain it. They know the difference between being held with impatience and being held with care. They may not have the vocabulary for safety, but the body recognizes it. Adults are not so different either. We may get better at hiding what we need, and we may learn how to smile, nod, and move through a day as if nothing is wrong. But some part of us still listens for the tone beneath the sentence. That's why a simple phrase can feel entirely different depending on who says it. "I'm here" can be a casual comment. It can also be a lifeline. "Take your time" may sound ordinary to someone else, but to a person who has spent years feeling rushed, judged, or unwanted, it can feel like a door opening. The words matter, of course, but something rides underneath them. Presence, attention, the willingness to stay. I think we sometimes underestimate how much love is carried through attention. When someone gives us their attention, they're giving us a portion of their life. They're saying, even if only for that moment, that we are worth stopping for. That can heal more than we realize. So many people are spoken at, but not truly heard. They are answered before they are understood. They are corrected before they are comforted. Their pain is managed instead of received. Then someone finally listens. The whole heart can feel the difference. There's a kind of listening that does not rush to fill the space. It doesn't turn every confession into advice, and it doesn't make the other person work harder to be accepted. It simply stays present. That kind of listening can feel like love in its purest form. I think about the people who have loved us without always saying the words perfectly. Some love has a rough voice. Some love is awkward. Some love arrives carrying worry because worry is the only language that the person learned. That can be complicated. We don't have to pretend every clumsy expression feels good. We don't have to excuse hurtful words just because they came from someone who cared in their own limited way. Still, it is worth noticing that love often reaches for us through imperfect vessels. A person may not know how to say, "I'm afraid of losing you." So they remind you to be careful. They may not say, "You are precious to me." So they ask instead, if your car is running all right. There can be tenderness hidden beneath those rough edges. Not always, but sometimes. And that's enough. The language beneath words asks us to listen with wisdom. Not to imagine love where there's only harm, but to notice the quiet care that might otherwise pass us by. There are other times when words are not needed because the relationship has carried enough history. A glance across a crowded room can become a whole conversation. A hand resting on a shoulder can say what would take paragraphs to explain. Someone sitting beside us in grief may offer more comfort than any speech could manage. That kind of love respects the limits of language. It knows when words would only make noise. I've always found that very, very powerful. There are moments when silence is not emptiness. Silence can be shelter. When someone's hurting deeply, the need is not always for an answer. Sometimes the need is for another human being who is willing to sit close to the ache without trying to solve it too quickly. That presence says, you don't have to carry this alone. Maybe that's one reason love feels so mysterious. It can travel through things that seem too small to hold it. A tone, a pause, a touch, a look from someone who understands. Ordinary things become vessels for something sacred. And sometimes the absence of those things tells its own story. A cold tone can wound more than the sentence itself. A silence can abandon when it refuses connection. A person can say all the right words, and still leave us feeling alone. The heart notices that. It listens beneath the surface. It's always listening. This is why the way we speak to one another matters so much. My friend Herbie Pilato says that all the time, and he's been right all the time on that. Words are not just information. They carry atmosphere. They can make a room warmer or colder, and they can draw someone closer or teach them to hide. A gentle word at the right moment can soften a fear that has been living in someone for years. A careless word can stay in memory long after the conversation ends. That gives our speech weight. Not to make us afraid of every sentence, but to remind us that language is one of the ways that love becomes visible. We will not always say things perfectly either. No one does. No one. But we can speak with more care. We can notice when a person needs kindness more than correction. We can allow our tone to carry the love that we hope our words express. There's a simple honesty in that. If we love someone, the way that we speak to them should make it easier for them to believe they're safe with us. Not every conversation will be easy. Love still has to tell the truth. Sometimes it has to say something difficult, but even difficult truths can be carried with respect. The goal is not to avoid pain at all costs. The goal is to keep humanity present. There's a difference between honesty that opens a door and honesty that throws a stone. Love knows the difference, or at least it tries to learn. I think many of us are still learning. We are learning how to say what we mean without using sharpness as protection. We're learning how to listen without preparing our defense. We're learning that tenderness is not weakness in conversation. It may be what allows truth to be heard. The language beneath words is not only about how others speak to us. It's also about what we carry into the room. People feel that. They do. I know you do. They feel whether we are hurried. They feel whether we are already judging. They feel whether our attention is a place where their heart can rest for a moment. And that doesn't mean that we have to become perfect, endlessly patient people. It means we can become a little more aware. You take that moment that we talk about all the times, that moment, that pause, a little more careful with the tone that we bring, a little more willing to let love be heard before we ever get to the sentence. There are people in our lives who may need that from us. Someone who has gone quiet, someone who sounds fine, but not quite like themselves. Notice, someone who keeps circling the edge of a truth that they're afraid to say. Love may speak first by making room, not forcing, not prying, just creating enough safety that the other person knows the door is open. That may be one of the gentlest gifts that we can offer. A place where words do not have to be perfect before they're welcomed. Because sometimes people don't know how to ask for help until they are already breaking. Sometimes the heart speaks in fragments. A sigh, a pause, a change in the way that someone says, I'm okay. If we're listening only to words, we may miss the message. They said, I'm okay. But love listens deeper. It hears the tremble. It notices the withdrawal. It recognizes when someone is trying to be brave because they're afraid of being a burden. Then love responds. Not always with a grand gesture, but with presence. A question asked gently. A bit more time. The willingness to remain near. That is the language I'm thinking about today. It's something I got to work on a lot in myself. It's the language that is beneath all of our speaking. The one that says, you matter here. Maybe the miracle is not only that love can be spoken. Maybe the miracle is that love can be felt even when the words are few. It can move through a room before anyone names it. It can soften a silence. It can turn attention into shelter. And when we learn to hear that language, we may discover that love has been speaking around us all along. In fact, I'd say you are going to discover that. Thank you, guys. Thank you for spending this time with me on Infinite Threads. May our words become gentler homes for the love that we carry. May we listen for what is being said beneath the surface. And may the people near us feel, even before we explain it, that they are welcome in our care. I love you guys very, very much. And you know what I need you to do? Go out there and pass that on, okay? Later, Gators. Bye-bye.
Every story, every voice, in this love we all rejoice. Infinite threads, here we go. Welcome.